Over recent weeks, I've told a series of stories looking back over my life. And I've told quite a number of them now, and they span close to 30 years. Most of the stories are about the last 22 years of our married life outside of the UK. And if I think back to when we left the UK in the middle of 1998, we literally left with 2 rucksacks and a few cardboard boxes that we packed in someone else's shipping container. And since that point, we've travelled in dozens of countries and we've lived in 4 different nations. We've had our 2 daughters, both born in South Africa, and they've lived in several countries themselves now. Kez has lived in 4 countries and Manu has lived in 3 countries, and they've both travelled in many other countries. And so we've lived what has been, I suppose, an unusual life. It's been a life of moving, but we've also been stationary in different places for a good number of years. 9 years in South Africa, now 7 years here in Spain. And in each place we've been, we've recognised the deep need in us, particularly as people who've travelled a lot, and particularly as people who are raising third culture kids who are not living in their passport nation. We've recognised it's really, really important to have a place that is home. And obviously home is us, home is the family, home is the place where we have relationship, but also it is important, and it has been really significant for us, to have a physical place of rest and recuperation, a place of shared memories, a place of shared culture and rhythms that we've created that is the essence of our family life together. And so the home that we've had and the home that we've lived in has always been really, really significant and really important to us, and has always been a major prayer point as we've moved from one place to another. Lord, please lead us to a place that will suit us for this season that we're entering into. It'll be a place where we can create a rhythm and a culture and a place of beauty and a place where we are able to build our home. And so this story today really is a testimony that in the 4 countries where we've lived, God has always enabled us to do that, both through our own hard work and through his kindness and blessing. And those 2 things kind of married together has enabled us to create a home in each place that we've been, which has been a springboard for us to travel and a place for us to come back to. That's been our kind of nest, our place on earth that is ours. And that's been a real blessing. And so this, I guess, has been a repeated Ebenezer stone in my pillar, that in each place we've seen really clear provision. I think of our years in Mozambique, and I told this story earlier in this series of stories about building our own house in Mozambique. After we left there, I wrote a poem, and I thought I'd read that poem now. And this poem really was about, I suppose, the process of building our own house. And it's called A Thing of Beauty. It was a thing of beauty, thick mud walls, whitewashed, soft lighting from the candles and cream tiles throughout. The bed, crafted from sleepers reclaimed from an upturned railway, a tin pail, our panelled corner bath, with the canvas sack and pulley our shower. It was a thing of beauty. The kitchen, its handmade teak units, embracing a Belfast sink rescued from a Zimbabwean tip. No glass in the windows to slow the evening breeze, and the long, low stoop facing the setting sun. It was a thing of beauty, but it didn't start this way. An acre of dense bush with anthills standing proud, the ground littered with bullets, debris from decades of war, 2 scarred coconut palms lean apart, an echo of quarrels the land has seen. It was a thing of beauty, but it didn't start this way. We burnt and cleared the land, burying weapons as we filled the trenches, raising 4-metre-high palm trunks with rusty nail and string our plumb line, treacherous splinters from the split palm planks that frame and wrap our house. It was a thing of beauty, but it didn't start this way. Days of digging and treading mud, layers of plaster sun-dried, our skin burnt from the lime wash, the roof a dishevelled thatch, and inside cool and dark with the smell of mud and grass. It was a thing of beauty, but it didn't start this way. Our borehole waters the vegetables. The solar panel powers a solitary bulb. We develop, subdue and shape a home, a place of joy and laughter, and creating somehow redeem the land into a thing of beauty. We develop, subdue and shape a home, a place of joy and laughter, and creating, somehow redeem the land into a thing of beauty. I love that kind of thought of developing and subduing and shaping a home, a place of joy and laughter, and creating, and in that process of creating, redeeming the land into a thing of beauty. And actually in Mozambique we were physically doing that. We were taking a piece of land which literally was battle scarred, which literally was littered with bullets, and we shaped it, quite literally, into something that we loved. A place that was many, many magical memories, and it became a haven. It became a house of prayer instead of a place of warfare. And that act of, kind of that redemptive act that creating a home brings, I think, it's not a metaphor, it's a reality. And each of us has the amazing privilege of doing that wherever we are. Even if we only live in a home for a year, we're able to kind of bring our presence, bring Holy Spirit, bring our creative abilities, bring our relationships and our spiritual rhythms into that place to create a thing of incredible beauty. As we were building that house, we knew we wouldn't be there forever. And we knew that our investment in building a house was actually something for the future as well, for future generations, that in our pioneering, we were laying down the future, a home for people in the future. And that really was what happened after we left the house, and we came back several times, and we actually stood, and I've told this story as well, of standing in our kitchen teaching the discipleship training school that was meeting in the lounge area of our house, and people living in the bedrooms. And so there was a real sense of the next generation, I guess, gaining and benefiting from our hard work. And that's something I've seen, I guess, repeatedly. From Mozambique we moved down to South Africa, and God blessed us there. We had a lovely place to live, and that became the place of raising our daughters, of birth, of adoption, of friendship, of family, of living in a place that we loved. From there we moved through the UK, and again we had a beautiful place that was provided really miraculously at amazingly low rent in one of the most expensive parts of the country when we had nothing. And we had this beautiful little house that was part of an enclave of 5 houses that were provided by a trust for missionaries on furlough. And so for 2 years we lived in that, and it was such a blessing. And then from there we came to Spain. And I guess, to be honest, this last decade of my life has been a time when I've really wanted my own house. I've wanted a place that was mine, that I'm able to put down roots and have some land. And I guess that's been a desire of my heart. I often joke about this. My name has an interesting meaning. So Timothy means honouring God, and my surname, Heathcote, literally means a cottage on the heath, or a cottage on moorland. And so in a sense, my name means honouring God in a cottage on the moors. And actually that's what I would love. I would love to have a piece of land in the middle of nowhere, in a wilderness area where I can be, in a place of beauty, a place of solitude, a place with rootedness in the ground, in gardens and woodworking. And that's my dream, I guess. That's my deep desire. And if I don't see that fulfilled now, I am sure I'll see it fulfilled in the restored creation, because I think it's a God-given desire and a pull of my heart. It's interesting, when we moved to Spain, and we both felt a similar desire. Miranda was really challenged by the Lord. I want to be your home. I want to be your home. And we recognised that our yearning for home, in a much deeper way, was a yearning for God, and a yearning for intimacy and for rootedness and community in Him and in our wider community. As Rob Bell says, this is about that. Our desire for home is a desire for much more. It really speaks of eternity in our hearts. It speaks of a deep yearning. And I guess the challenge has always been, can we live in a place create a home, create a place of beauty, and not allow it to become an idol, whilst at the same time making it all it can possibly be, and allowing somehow our longing for home and for roots to draw us deeper into God? That's a hard question to ask ourselves. And I think, to be honest, our testimony in this time in Spain is that it has been difficult. It has not always been easy, but it has been a time where God has drawn us deeper into him, both of us. It's been a process of deepening and becoming the people we are today. But also our testimony is that the home that we're renting really has been such a gift from God. And I think we've seen in each place we've lived, in the 4 countries we've lived, we've been in times when we've lived in a single bedroom. We've had times when we've moved around with rucksacks. We've had times in our married life when we've rented tiny 1-bedroom flats. We've had times of building our own house, and now we're living in a spacious home in Spain. But there's a real sense that in every season of our life, God has known what we've needed for that season and has provided what we've needed for that season. And so right now we're living in a place where we've been blessed with space. We've had amazing times. We had a time recently where we had 17 people for dinner, and we sat around several tables that we pulled together. We were people from 10 different countries, speaking 3 languages at the table. And it was such a beautiful picture of the kingdom of God. And to have our daughters growing up in that environment feels such a privilege. We've had times when we've ran marriage evenings, and we've had 8 couples, and we've spread around different levels of the house because we're a big house on a hill. People in the garden, people in different corners, and we've been able to spread out 8 couples in different areas where they can all have their little quiet corner to speak and talk and be together as a couple. And we recognise God has given us this house for this season. Now, we're not in our house, and yet it's our home. And we've been able to make this place into what we want it to become. And at the same time, it's a kind of a gift that's on loan to us. Interestingly, the landlords of our house are wonderful people, and they live now 10,000 kilometres away. But they're landlords who are very happy with us to look after and steward and work on the house. But their whole process of building this house was in itself a painful process. It was a long, drawn-out journey for them that took 6 or 7 years of heartache and legal wrangling to actually have the house built. They were doing a sort of a build with an architect and a builder, all as part of a package, but they were stung on many fronts. The road that we live, once it's translated, the name means Road of Tears, and our landlord has often joked that this building process for him was a time of tears and crying. It was so frustrating, and often he begged, God, please let us out of this. Can we please get out of this trap? And he really felt God saying, no, persevere. You're building this house not only for yourself, but for the people who will come after you. Now, we've lived in this house for 7 years, and that couple were part of the team that we work in. They've left and they now live in another country, but they didn't know at that point they were building this house partly for us and for people who will come after us. And so we're living in a house that other people have built, that other people have invested in, but we have this opportunity now to be developing and subduing and shaping a place of beauty for ourselves and also for people who will come. We're part of our landlord's story as well as our own story. And I'm really thankful that they're wonderful people who are happy for us to work. And I've spent hundreds of hours, that's no exaggeration, hundreds of hours working in the garden. I've brought in hundreds of tons of rocks. Now that maybe is an exaggeration. I've brought in tons of rocks, probably 60 or 70 carloads of rocks that I've picked up from different parts of the mountainside and driven home, and then hundreds of bucket loads of rocks. I've carried down 80 steps, the length of the house and the garden, building terracing in the garden, and it's transformed the garden over time. And that's an investment in someone else's house, which some people say is a crazy thing to do. But when you move into a place, you don't know if you're there for 1 year or 10 years. And so it's always been my feeling, I want to steward this place. I want to leave it better than I came. And also I want to live in a place that I love. Now, outside our front door, we have an orange and a lemon tree, which our landlords planted 10 years ago. We are enjoying the fruit of the trees they planted, and I have probably made 30 or 40 jars of marmalade this year from that orange tree alone. I don't know how long we'll live in this house. It might be that we're only here for another year, but in the future generations, people will eat the figs and the cherries from the trees that I've planted in our small garden because I've invested for the future. And so there's a real sense, I think, of in this creating a place of beauty, that we have an invitation to live a life and to care for something and to think about future generations in a way that is good stewardship. Building for the next generation is mission. Caring for the earth is mission. The very first mandate that mankind was given was care for the garden, look after it, develop it, subdue it, care for it. And that caring for creation, that caring for our home is part of our created in the image of God. And so one of the things I've loved in the process of creating a home that's the place we want to be, that's been given to us, and in developing it with our God-given imagination and creativity, is that God meets us in that place. A home becomes a place where we create a rhythm, an atmosphere, a culture. I have a chair, my favourite chair, on the veranda. It's a place where for 7 years now I've been sitting every single morning, even in the rain, sheltered. I tuck myself up in the corner and I watch the change in the sky colour. I can't see the sunrise, but the change in the colour. I sit there, I have a quiet time in the evenings. Most evenings I sit in that same chair and watch the sun set. This has become part of my rhythm of life. That chair, that space has actually become a sacred space. It's become a place that's something to do with my spirituality. It's really interesting how we can create a rhythm in a home. We can create a place. We can create culture. Jesus said that those who give up home and mother and father and brothers and sisters for his sake will receive 100 times as much and will inherit eternal life. And I think my Ebenezer stone is recognizing the truth in that yes, there's been sacrifice in our lives where we've given up. We've left our home, our passport nation, we've left family and relatives and friends, and we've followed what's been the call of God on our lives. But God has never let us down. God has never left us. God has enabled us to create places of beauty and to live in homes that have become our haven. And I recognise, whilst I'm saying that there are still deep desires for more. There's still a desire to put my feet down in my ground. And I don't know if that will ever happen in that way. But even wakening up to those deep desires are part of my growth, part of my becoming who God has made me to be. Denying desires is not always the best thing. Recognizing those desires in us that are good and that are God-given and that are part of creativity and being made in the image of God are inherent to becoming who we truly are made to be, becoming fully human. Delight yourself in the Lord and he'll give you the desires of your heart. Does that mean he'll provide what you desire? Or does that mean he will grow your desires so you desire what is good? I wonder. Maybe it's both at different times. God works in us to will and to do his good pleasure. He works in us so that we want to do certain things, so that we're pulled in certain directions. And those deep desires for home, for rootedness, for belonging are a good thing in themselves. And they're also a deeper pull to a deep place in God. It's an invitation to create a home and to find our home in God. And my testimony today, I guess, is that over all these years, over 20 years of journeying and pilgrimage in different places, in different cultures and different countries, we really have seen God's goodness in providing us a home and in becoming more and more our home.